Okay, let's do an example of FCFF based valuation with a single growth horizon. So you are involved in the valuing, let's call it Cephalon, whatever it is, an auto parts manufacturing firm with promising technology but poor management for a hostile acquisition. The firm currently has revenues of $1 billion, a pre-tax operating margin of 5%. Start. Because this is a single growth horizon, no two growth rates are given, so you're only interested in what the values are right now and what are they expected to be next year, and then it's a constant growing perpetuity formula. So we've got revenues of 1,000 million, which is $1 billion, pre-tax operating margin of 5%. So pre-tax op margin is 5%. Okay, tax rate of 40%. Expected growth rate in earnings of 5%. 5%. The firm also has a debt to capital ratio of 10%, beta of zero point 0.8, cost of borrowing pre-tax of 7.5%. Firm has no net capex or working capital needs, so that makes it easier. So while calculating the free cash flows to the firm, you're only required to calculate what the expected EBIT into 1 minus T needs to be, because there are no capex and working capital requirements. The risk-free rate is 7%. Okay, so firstly, you're required to calculate the value to sales ratio for Cephalon, for which you need to first calculate the value of the stock. The value of the stock, as you know, is FCFF divided by K minus G, WAC minus G. So we don't have WAC, we have the growth rate, and we don't have the free cash flow to the firm next year. But we know what the EBIT into 1 minus T today is. So EBIT into 1 minus T today is basically the revenues into the pre-tax operating margins into the 1 minus tax rate. Number comes out to be 30. And you know that this is going to be growing at 5%, so you can calculate the next year's EBIT by doing this. It's 31.5. So as there are no capex and working capital requirements, this also is your next year's free cash flow to the firm. So that is a simple calculation. Now you need to calculate what the WACC is. So for the WACC, you need first the cost of equity, which is the beta into the market risk premium, which if it is not given, we generally assume to be 5.5%, and the risk-free rate, which is 7%. So 11.4% is your cost of equity. The WACC is this cost of equity into the weight of equity, which is minus this 10%, and then the weight of the debt, which is cost of debt is this into 1 minus tax rate is this into the this, right? So we've got a 10.71% WACC. Now we can calculate the value of the stock as the free cash flow divided by the WACC minus the growth rate, which comes out to be this number. We are required to find the value to sales ratio, which is then simply this divided by the sales number. 0.55 is the value for sales ratio. That's the answer for the first question. Now, B part, you believe that if the current management is replaced, you can increase the pre-tax cost of pre-tax operating margin to 7%. Let's replicate the entire thing here, right? So we are saying that we can increase the pre-tax operating margin to 7%. This is one area that we've changed. Then you can increase the debt to capital ratio to 30%. So it's 10% at this point in time. You can increase this to 30. That's another change that we made. Okay, so the cost of borrowing as a result of doing that increases from 7.5 to 8%. So that's the third change that we're required to make. And what else? If the expected growth rate remains at 5%, which is at 5%, estimate the value to sales for Cephalon after these changes have been made. Now, it would be naive to believe that the value can simply be calculated using this because we made the changes and because again it's a formula based model, therefore all the necessary changes have been implemented already. No, that's slightly naive because once your debt to capital changes, as a result of that, your beta is going to change. So the beta is no longer going to be zero point 0.8. First, you need to unlever this zero point 0.8 using the pre-cost of pre debt to capital ratio or debt to equity. So this is 1 plus the 1 minus t factor, 1 minus the tax rate, which is this, into the debt to equity, which is if debt to capital is 10%, then debt to equity is what? 1 over 9. So we're left with 0.75 as the unlevered beta, but now we need to re-lever it using the new debt to equity ratio. So 1 plus 1 minus t, I'll just simply do it zero point 0.6. And now 3 over 7 is your debt to equity. Right, so this is your new beta. You simply replace the earlier beta with this one in the calculation. This gives you your new WACC, which is 9.97%. So value of the stock is now accurately calculated at $887 per share, and the value to sales ratio is 0.89. So by making these changes, by increasing the after-tax pre-tax operating margin and by having the ability to reduce your WACC from 10.71 to 9.97%, you have been able to increase the value of the firm quite significantly, actually, by a whopping 61%. Okay, thank you.